Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 538, and today's date is December 10th, 2014, and the title of this episode is DHS and FBI issue a new alert. Threats from terrorists and lone wolf groups could be on the rise. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand the central bankers, they're out there trying to convince us that we're in this fabulous recovery, but we understand we are not. I mean, they're throwing at us statistical numbers. They completely manipulate them. We understand they manipulate unemployment, GDP, inflation. They can manipulate the stock market any way they want. They can continually make it go up using high-frequency trading and plunge protection. We also understand they're suppressing gold and silver because they don't want anyone to realize that we're in this huge problem of a collapse which is headed right towards us. And you can see they're trying to provoke wars across the ocean here to divert everyone's attention from what is coming. But we look at real economic indicators, what is really going on in the economy. We look at real unemployment numbers, we look at retail sales, we look at real estate, and we can see from the American people that things have really not gotten that much better for many of the people. Right now, 2 out of every 5 Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and this is up by 33% since 2012. 40% of the consumers said they are coping with this challenge of living paycheck to paycheck. So it is very hard for a lot of people out there. 23% say they are optimistic about the economy. This is down from 27% at the beginning of the recession in 2009. In September 2012, showed things were looking up for most Americans. Many aspects of the consumer sentiment indicated marked improvement, yet from there things have either plateaued or gotten worse. And I'm going to say things have really gotten worse. A lot of people are very worried about losing their jobs. They're worried because they see a lot of layoffs around the industry. A lot of people are placing their resumes out in the market and they're getting absolutely no response. These are the people that still have jobs saying, you know what? I see layoffs coming. I realize they're coming, and what I'm going to do is put my resume out there and let's see if I get anyone to have me come in for an interview. And people are doing this, and there is absolutely nothing. And we can see right now that decreasing purchases of high-end brands and doing more one-stop shopping to reduce the number of trips are just as popular as they were last year, with 40% of consumers saying they have cut their spending over the past 12 months. An even bigger proportion of Americans, 55%, say they continue to look for ways to save money, including paying more attention to prices, using coupons more often, shopping around to get the best deals, and buying more items in bulk. And I can say for myself and my family, we shop in bulk right now because things are getting way, way too expensive. I go to the supermarket, I see meat, I see milk, I see fresh vegetables and fruit. It is all skyrocketing and it's getting very, very expensive. And this is why I've been shopping in those warehouse stores like Costco, BJ's, and things like that, because I buy in bulk. Now, I talk about real estate quite a bit, and we understand that real estate is falling apart. And we're seeing that there are certain states right now that are seeing an increase of delinquencies in the fourth quarter. And right now we are seeing that New York is seeing more than 5% increase of delinquencies. We see New Jersey between 4 and 5%, Florida above 5%, the South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, all those states, they're seeing an increase of 4 to 5%. We're seeing California an increase of 4 to 5%. So we're seeing delinquencies on the rise right now. People are having a very tough time making their mortgage payments, and this is going to get a lot worse because we understand that in 2015, Fannie and Freddie, they're lowering their deposits of what you need to put down on a house to 3%. And if you're going into a new development, a lot of the builders will make up that 3% and say you need 0% financing. And this is going to bring a lot of people into the market that really shouldn't be there. We saw this back in 2006 through 2008, and this created the subprime market. We're going to see the same thing happen. We've seen this in the auto industry right now, where they'll take anyone that has a heartbeat, and we see delinquencies on automobiles skyrocketing right now. The repo man is visiting many people repossessing these cars because these people really shouldn't be buying cars. Again, I understand you want a new car, you want to purchase a house, but if you do not have the income or that secure job, and right now I don't really believe there is a secure job. I think anyone can be let go at any time. It's not like it used to be where you kept your job for 30 or so years. I think things are in turmoil right now, and you can be let go. And this is why people are not confident in the economy, because they don't feel it. They don't, even though the president tells us that we're in a recovery, and we all understand that we are not. He's saying that we are, and just because you don't feel it, we still are. Well, I hate to say it. When you're in a recovery, you feel it. You feel secure in your job. You feel that you're getting raises. You feel that you're getting cost of living. You feel that you don't have to worry about your next month's bills. That is a recovery. That is a strong recovery where you can say, you know what, let's go out and buy that car. The banks, the government, they don't have to reduce the requirements of you getting a loan to get people in. The requirements will go up because more and more people are more secure, they have good credit, and they can go and purchase these items. But right now what we're seeing is they can't get anyone to purchase these things, especially homes. And this is why they've been reducing the deposit and how you qualify for a mortgage. And right now we see mortgage and refinancing loans continually declining. That is not improving at this time. Now, a really great indicator to let us know that the economy is not doing well at all is the Baltic Dry Index, and we reported that the Baltic Dry Index fell below the 1,000 point range right here. And before the crisis of 2008, we understand the Baltic Dry Index was at 11,000 points, and the Baltic Dry Index is raw material that factories use, and speculators really can't do anything to this. So this is a good area to look. And now during the recession in February, the Baltic Dry Index fell to its lowest to 647 points, and then again everything got pumped up by the central banks, by the governments. They manipulated a lot of numbers, and they made everyone believe that people are buying things, so factories went ahead and they started manufacturing, and they started to push this economy up. But now we see it is coming down once again. Now we see that the Baltic Dry Index fell again 19 points. We are now at 933 points. We were at 982. And it is continually falling. And we can see that this is not a good indicator of how the economy is doing. Now, we realize the government is pushing, and the central bankers are pushing the oil prices down. They're trying to get people in to purchase retail goods, and they're trying to keep the economy going by people purchasing, by manufacturing, but this is not really happening. People are filling up their cars, and they're pocketing the rest of the money that they don't need to use on filling up their cars or trucks or whatever. And we can see right now they realize, and I realize, that oil prices will go back up, gas will increase once again, and those people who are saving this money or just getting by now, making it a little bit easier, they're not going out and purchasing these items in the stores. And we can see they're continually pushing these prices down, and this is hurting a lot of different nations around the world, and it's going to hurt people that have jobs. They're predicting right now that there's going to be a loss of about 35,000 oil and gas jobs. They are at risk right now. Thousands of British workers are to lose their jobs as the oil and gas industry declines, a new report suggests. Department of Business, Innovation and Skills, the report claims around 35,000 jobs will be lost in this sector. So we can see right now this is not turning out well for many of the other nations. Bank of America is out there, and they're saying OPEC has lost its competence as it failed to stabilize oil prices at the last meeting, according to Bank of America. It warns oil will slide to $50 a barrel leading to wild prices where only rich Middle East states like Saudi Arabia will benefit. Countries that don't possess vast reserves, such as Venezuela and Nigeria, will struggle to survive. Bank of America said the catastrophic drop in oil prices is worth $1 trillion of stimulus to the global economy, which is equal to about $730 billion tax cut in 2015. The world has become more dependent on central bank stimulus. Bank of America said 56% of global GDP is currently supported by zero interest rates, as well as 83% of free-floating equities on global exchanges. Half of all government bonds in the world yield less than 1%. Around 1.4 billion people are experiencing negative rates in any form. So is this really an economy that is recovering? No, it's not. And they're trying to manipulate it right now to keep it going because they realize that things are starting to fall apart. But I think it's starting to backfire on them, and it's going to get worse as we go forward. Now, it seems like there is an effort to repeal Dodd-Frank. And there has been a lobbying going on to sneak a clause in the continuing resolution to fund the government over the holidays for the December 11th deadline. The provision they are trying to sneak in would allow the banks to trade derivatives through subsidiaries that are federally insured by the FDIC. So they're trying to insure the derivatives because they realize once the derivatives comes down, the entire system is screwed and they don't want to lose their money. So they're trying to get under the umbrella of the FDIC. And we can see right now, basically, in other words, they are circumventing the very reforms of the 2007-2009 crash. The manipulated banks are trying to sneak this into a bill to keep the government funded for Christmas, and they know they will get the votes because nobody will read the fine print on Capitol Hill. They are trying now effectively to repeal the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, H.R. 4173, before the new Congress comes into power. And again, the banks, the central banks, they only do things to benefit themselves. They do not care about the people, and this is evident, and they're trying to get the government to insure their losses, and we can see they're going to try to sneak this in. Now, there's something very odd that's going on right now. The U.S. Treasury is quietly ordering survival kits for the U.S. bankers. The Department of Treasury is spending about $200,000 on survival kits for all of its employees who oversee the federal banking system, according to a new solicitation. Survival kits will be delivered to every major bank in the United States and includes a solar blanket, food bar, water purification tablets, and dust mask. So we can see right now something is going on, and we know what that something is. They are expecting a major collapse in the country, and they're preparing for it. Why do you think they've been beefing up security around all government buildings? Why do you think DHS has been purchasing billions of rounds and pretty much selling tanks, machine guns, surveillance equipment to all the local law enforcement around the country? This is in preparation for a major collapse. And some of the things that they purchased were about 2,400 calorie food bar, 3-pack 8.5 ounce of water, which has a 5-year shelf life, 50 water purification tablets, minimum 5-year shelf life, reusable solar blankets, one size fits all poncho with hood, 12-hour light sticks, 1 pair of latex gloves, whistle with lanyard, 33-piece personal first aid kit, dynamo rechargeable lantern with AM/FM radio, air aid emergency masks. So let me ask everyone, what do you think they are actually preparing for? Look what they have: rechargeable lanterns with radio. They have light sticks. They have food. They have first aid. They are preparing for something to happen in this country. A power outage, a complete collapse of the system, where they don't have to go out and deal with the rioting people that are going to the supermarkets to get the last drop of food there. They are preparing just like you should be preparing. Again, the government is preparing for something very big. This is why they've been doing this all along. And all those people who are not woken up, who are believing the propaganda from the government that everything is fine, those are the people that will not be prepared. Those are the people that are going to have a huge surprise. Those are the people that we're going to need to be worried about. Now, of course, you can go around in your neighborhood, try to tell people, you should start prepping. Some things are coming down the line, and some people will listen, most will not. I have a very tough time talking to people. They just don't want to hear it. They don't want to have anything to do with it. But you can see right now, the government is preparing. You need to prepare. Now, out of Judicial Watch, they have uncovered about $182 million was spent on 2,400 illegal kids or teenagers that were brought into the country under the Obama agenda. Now, 24 of the surge of nearly 50,000 unaccompanied illegal alien children who flooded the U.S. southern border this year cost taxpayers the staggering amount of $182 million in just 4 months in only 2 military bases in Texas and Oklahoma. Using the Freedom of Information Act, Judicial Watch discovered that the Baptist Church Children and Family Services received $86,000 per child, or $104 million for minors housed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, an additional $64,000 per child, or $77 million for those housed at Lakeland Air Force Base in San Antonio. At Fort Sill, the bill included about $104 million for about 1,200 beds, $6 million for hotel accommodations for the 822 staff members, about $1 million for medical items, $180,000 worth of recreational items such as board games, soccer balls, $180,000 for educational items such as crayons and paints, $200,000 for laptops, $160,000 for 800 cell phones with international call capabilities and radio. At Lackland, they set up cable television at a cost of $20,000, made sure that each kid could call home twice per week at a cost of $576,000, and spent about $80,000 on extra shower stall heads. It is outrageous that the Obama administration spent nearly $200 million of taxpayer funds to provide illegal alien children with the types of extravagant, high-tech equipment and lavish benefits many American families cannot even afford for their own children. And we have a lot of children who are homeless. We have a lot of children who are on the streets. We have a lot of veterans and a lot of veteran families who are on the streets that cannot afford to live here. And these are the people that fought for this country. This is disgusting what is going on here. And this is all for the agenda to bring in illegals, give them work permits, and have them work for the corporations without receiving that $3,000 penalty from Obamacare. This is all part of the plan. Of course, it's a part of a much bigger agenda, which eventually they'll go on Obamacare. They'll be able to apply for student loans. They'll get automobile loans. They'll be able to go into the armed forces. This is all being done on purpose. They're trying to pump up the economy, and corporations want these illegals in here so they can pretty much get around those penalties, and this is exactly what they've been doing. Now, we understand the CIA torture report came out yesterday, and it appears that the EU countries rendered people to CIA for torture. It appears that Poland, Romania, Lithuania hosted CIA black sites, which were effectively torture chambers. Evidence points to other European countries cooperating with the U.S. spy agency in organizing covert rendition flights. Evidence points to other European countries cooperating with the U.S. spy agency in organizing covert rendition flights, including Britain, Sweden, Germany, Austria, Spain, Portugal, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Austria, the Czech Republic, Greece, Cyprus, Croatia, Bosnia, and Albania. And we can see many of the nations went along with the United States, and we can see the United States was torturing people. This is completely disgusting. It's horrific. We, the people, do not agree with our government in what they're doing, and there should be charges brought up against every single one of them, and they all should be thrown out of government at this point. The CIA torture report also said they foiled UK terror plots, which actually did not happen. The CIA lied when it claimed the agency has successfully foiled a series of UK terror plots with the intelligence gleaned through its enhanced interrogation techniques, which is torture. The Senate Intelligence Committee report reveals. The report says the CIA misrepresented its role in uncovering terror plots linked to the UK, including a plan to fly hijacked planes into Heathrow Airport and London Canary Wharf, and this did not happen. They did not uncover this. It seems like the UK authorities actually uncovered this. Now, China and North Korea are out there, and they have slammed the U.S. government for being hypocritical on the issue relating to human rights. As Human Rights Day approaches, high-profile cases of violations within the American borders and by its agencies abroad are being scrutinized, especially as it pertains to be a defender of civil liberties globally. And you have to remember, the United States have been bringing charges against China, North Korea, Iran, and many other nations to say they're violating human rights. This is especially true with Syria, and we can see right now the United States shouldn't be throwing this around at all because they are violating human rights, and I should say the government. And when we talk about different countries, we're talking about the government specifically, not the people in the government in the country. Like here in the United States, many of the American people would never have gone along with torture. It is the government that is doing this and kept it hidden from the people. Now, the UN is out there. The United Nations High Commission for Human Rights said on Wednesday that there should be no impunity or statute of limitation for torture following the U.S. Senate. The Convention Against Torture prohibits torture and allows for no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, including a state of war, as justification. The Convention lets no one off the hook, neither the torturers themselves, nor the policymakers, nor the public officials who define the policy or give the orders. And we can see right now, absolutely, we know from the United States, the 1996 law, that everyone who is implicated or knew about this is an accessory to this torture. And do I think there's going to be people brought up on charges? Most likely not. Now, as we know, as this CIA torture report came out, they continually warn us about protests all around the globe, and the U.S. is sure to face protests both at home and abroad after the intelligence report was released. I mean, they're very nervous about other countries and terrorist groups rising up and doing something. But we have to look at something very important right now. The Founding Fathers were strongly opposed to torture. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, George Mason, and the other framers made it clear that torture is never permissible. The Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution is full of prohibitions on torture. When the Fifth Amendment says, of the accused person nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against themselves, the word compelled is referring to the previous practice of judicial torture of the accused. Accused persons who take the Fifth are thus exercising a right not to be tortured by the government into confessing to something they may or may not have done. The Eighth Amendment, excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted is intended to forbid post-sentencing torture. Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The phrase all men means all persons of any nationality. We know what the Founding Fathers believed. They believed in universal rights. They believed in basic principles of human dignity. Above all, they did not think the government had the prerogative of behaving as it pleased. It doesn't have the prerogative to torture. And they put this all over about torture, saying they do not condone this. And we can see right now, this entire government is off the Constitution. They're not following it, and they are violating it. And once they do this, they have broken the contract with the people. They need to be removed from their positions. Now, as I discussed yesterday, we understand that the CIA torture report was released at a critical period where the Islamic State is in Iraq, it's in Syria, and they want to put boots on the ground in Iraq and then eventually go into Syria and remove Assad. And this was done on purpose because they want the people around the world, they want them to pretty much get together and cause some type of terrorist act. And if they can't do it on their own, which most likely they won't, the U.S. government will do it, and they will create a false flag event. And we already see the FBI and DHS issuing a bulletin related to Tuesday's release of the Senate report outlining harsh interrogation techniques, which is torture, used by the CIA on terror suspects, law enforcement to remain vigilant to the underlying threat from terrorist organizations and lone wolf type actors. They might strike anywhere in this country or overseas. The notices urged Americans to be alert to their surroundings and take appropriate safety precautions, including avoiding demonstrations or confrontational areas or circumstances. And we can see right now that they're trying to build this up. They're trying to convince us that these terrorists are coming after the United States, and it was done on purpose. Now we see out in Thailand, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Libya, Yemen, we see that there are warnings all over the place. There's warning for U.S. embassies, U.S. foreign missions around the world, including Pakistan, Thailand, Afghanistan, and others, issued warnings to American citizens traveling to these countries following the publication of a Senate report on a controversial torture techniques that the CIA was using. U.S. citizens in Pakistan should be aware that the release of declassified versions of the executive summary, findings, and conclusions of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Study on the CIA rendition, detention, and interrogation program could prompt anti-U.S. protests and violence against U.S. interests, including private U.S. citizens. The notice published Tuesday on the website of the U.S. Embassy in all of these different countries. The exact same warning was then sent to other embassies to warn them, and we can see they are building this up quite a bit. The Islamic State is out there, and now they are using the Senate intelligence report to recruit more terrorists and to pretty much call on all the terrorists to do something to the United States. And we can see they're building this up. They're building the propaganda, and we already know there's a radioactive type of bomb in Europe. Nobody knows where it is, but we understand that it will be a false flag event. They're doing all of this because they're trying to maneuver a way of getting boots on the ground inside Iraq and Syria, because they realize air power there is going to do absolutely nothing to get Assad out of power, and that is their main goal. Now, the U.S. Senate out in Venezuela, they have approved a bill that would freeze the assets of Venezuelan officials accused of human rights violations. Really? The United States, who tortures people, who violates human rights, is sanctioning other countries for violating human rights. Well, I think the government needs to be looking inside and what's going on here and start to scratch their head and say, maybe we shouldn't be doing this at the time. But we have to remember they're taking their orders from the central bankers. They want Venezuela. Venezuela has a huge amount of oil. Actually, I believe it's more than Saudi Arabia. They want to put that on the U.S. dollar. This would prop up the entire economy and the U.S. dollar, so they do believe, and this is why they've been trying to get into this country for a very long time. The bill targets Venezuelan officials accused of directing or aiding human rights abuses, including arrests or prosecutions of anti-government protesters. The White House has offered approval for the bill, making its way through the Congress. U.S. President Barack Obama must sign the bill for it to become law, and most likely he will sign this bill. Now we can see out in the Pacific, China is being surrounded and encircled to contain it. Obama was out there many, many times letting us know that this encircling of China is meant to contain it. And why is it being contained? Well, when we go to war, we have to be ready. And this is why they're setting up missile bases in Australia, in Japan, in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in Taiwan. They're doing this all around the area. And right now, U.S. arms sales to Taiwan play an important role in Taiwan's defense in the face of the military threat from China. And this is coming from a Taiwanese defense official. China, a day earlier, urged the U.S. to block the bill related to the sale of military frigates to Taiwan, saying the arms sales to Taiwan interfere in China's internal affairs and that China is firmly opposed to the bill. And of course, they're going to do this because they don't want the weapons surrounding them like they are right now. And we have to understand that 60% of the U.S. fleet is now in the Pacific near China, surrounding them. And this is all being done for war. We understand that NATO, the United States, is moving a lot of military assets throughout Eastern Europe. They're placing them, they're positioning them, because they realize eventually what's going to happen is we will be going to war with Russia. Now, as we know, NATO and the U.S., they're removing soldiers from Afghanistan. Well, actually, the U.S. is keeping about 10,800 soldiers in Afghanistan right now. NATO is saying they're withdrawing all their troops from Afghanistan, and the U.S. says, okay, we need to increase the number of soldiers to make up for the removal of the NATO soldiers, and this is why U.S. soldiers are being kept there in Afghanistan. Well, they're really being kept there because they're never going to leave that area, because they're rich in oil, they're rich in lithium and copper. China's there, Russia's there. They sell the poppy, they grow the poppy, and they sell it across the all over the world as opium to pay for their covert missions. We also understand Afghanistan is in a strategic location. Right now, Russia is out there, and they're saying that the Afghanistan situation will likely worsen as NATO troops withdraw. And again, we're seeing an uptick of attacks on U.S. bases in Afghanistan. We also see that terrorist attacks are increasing in this area, and this makes the case of why the U.S. will have to bring in more soldiers into Afghanistan. As we know, Karzai, the president who left office, would not sign the bilateral security agreement, which gave immunity to the soldiers, and this is why the troops had to be withdrawn from Afghanistan. But the new president, which got elected with the help of John Kerry and the U.S. government, signed the agreement, and now we see the troops can stay in Afghanistan. And we can see that NATO, the U.S., they will eventually come back and they'll say, terrorism is up again. We're going to have to bring more and more troops into this area, and this is what we're going to see as time goes on. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand there's a ceasefire going on right now. The day before, they started the ceasefire the day before the Human Rights Day, which is December 10th. And we can see right now that Ukraine envoy rules out new round of peace talks soon. Ukraine military on Wednesday reported a significant reduction in shelling by separatists during a declared day of silence. And I have to say, both sides, Ukraine military fires upon the southeastern people. They retaliate. And of course, Kiev is only reporting that the southeastern people are retaliating, but we can see right now that is not the fact whatsoever. But we can see they're not going to do anything. They're not going to sit down at the peace talks until the shelling stops. Now, when will that be? We don't know, because every time Ukraine goes ahead and shells that area, the southeastern people retaliate. So there will be no talks right now. And they're trying to pretty much quit the Minsk deal whatsoever. They're trying to get rid of it. They don't want to deal with it anymore. And this is Russia's deal that they had for the ceasefire. And right now, the country of Ukraine is completely falling. It's collapsing. And according to the Financial Times, the IMF is seeing a 7% drop in Ukraine's GDP and a disruption of exports to Russia, the country's biggest trading partner. And we can see right now they need about a $15 billion financial aid into Ukraine to keep it afloat. Yatsenyuk, the Prime Minister of Ukraine, said on Tuesday that his government was prepared to put in place belt-tightening measures such as spending cuts and crackdown on the shadow economy. He added that his government was not begging for money but considered IMF a partner. Well, he works for the IMF. He is a banker. And again, the bankers own Ukraine right now, and they didn't get what they paid for. They paid for the southeastern region. They paid for Crimea. And right now they're going to push their agenda forward. Eventually, they will make their move. They will have an offensive to go after both of these regions. Now, it seems that Russian military specialists are now working in the Donetsk region, although not to support the separatist army, but to promote conflict de-escalation. And we have to remember, Putin was out there and he was trying to promote peace in the region. And this is why he came up with this plan. And this is the ceasefire that they've been trying to follow all this time. But we can see right now there are Russian military specialists in there trying to de-escalate the situation. Russia is doing so at the request of Ukraine's head of general staff. In other words, Ukraine actually invited the Russians in. So all this talk of Russia invading, bringing in military equipment, where is it all? They have no satellite photos, they have no video, no photographs, they have absolutely no proof, and now we see Ukraine invited Russian military into the region. Russian military specialists working in Donetsk region toward conflict de-escalation at Ukrainian General Staff's request, Russian Armed Forces Chief of Staff Gerasimov said this mission has been tasked together with the OSCE with helping the conflicting parties, which are the Ukrainian forces and the local militia, to find compromise solutions on de-escalating the tension and withdrawing the troops from the contact line. And we have to see, and we're going to have to see if this really works out and everything is de-escalated. Now, there are some leaked documents in Ukraine, and this leaked version of a new budget proposal in Ukraine, we are seeing the drastic extent to which the bankrupt government feed on the people. And this is what's happening there. The proposal includes measures to cut public education in Ukraine from 11 to 9 years. More importantly, education will no longer be funded by the state. There will be no more free food for children in school or for patients in hospitals, and healthcare will no longer be completely state funded. The government is also proposing to drastically reduce pension benefits. Women will have to work 10 more years in order to qualify for a pension, and men an additional 5. They are also proposing to freeze pension benefits, no longer adjusting them to the rampant inflation that's unfolding in Ukraine. They'd also like to do away with the number of public services. They've been proposed slashing the number of judges, prosecutors, and police. If the government is no longer going to provide these services, then why are the people still paying taxes? But of course, everyone still has to pay taxes because they are required by everyone. And we can see this is really austerity. The bank is in there once again, just like they did with Greece, Cyprus, and all the other countries. And they're imposing austerity on the country if they want these loans. And we can see their country is collapsing. And as you collapse the country and less people work, less revenue will come into the government, and they'll have to take on more and more loans. And this is exactly what we are seeing. Now, Russia put out their new draft of the Russian military doctrine, which is their preemptive nuclear strike doctrine. The renewed draft of the military doctrine would not have a reservation for preventative nuclear strikes on potential enemy. Article 198 of the document is very precise on the conditions under which Russia can use their nuclear weapons. A person involved in the preparation of the new doctrine told the Interfax on Wednesday it would become possible if the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Russian Federation are under threat. The Russian military doctrine approved in 2010 also lacks the provision for a preemptive nuclear strike. It states the Russian Federation reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in reply to strikes with nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction on its territory or on the territory of its allies. A strike is also possible in case of an aggression with use of conventional weapons that put the very existence of Russian Federation into question. The doctrine gives the right of final decision on nuclear strikes to the President of Russia. And we can see right now there is no way that at this point that Russia is going to strike the United States first. And right now the United States is the only country that actually used a nuclear weapon in the time in war. And we can see right now the central bankers, they have no allegiance to any country. They don't care. They're in it for themselves. And again, if they need to use nuclear weapons, they will. They have bunkers designed for themselves. They will go underground, and when everything is said and done and the population is reduced, they will then emerge, and they do believe they will restart the system all over again. Now, out in the Middle East, we understand the Islamic State is running rampant all over Iraq, in Syria, now spreading to Lebanon, spreading to Libya. And we can see right now the Islamic commander, whose wife was recently arrested by the Lebanese army, has now called jihad militants to fight inside Lebanon. Wow. So what are we seeing? We're seeing the Islamic State now waging war inside Lebanon. This is exactly what the United States, Israel, UK, and other Arab nations want. This will give them the ability to go back into these countries, because we can see the people in all of these countries are rising up and they're trying to take back their countries, and the central bankers are very worried about this, because if they start selling their oil not using the US dollar, this is when the dollar starts falling apart. Other countries do not have to keep the dollar in their reserves, and once this happens, the dollar flows back to the United States, and we see a devaluation of the dollar, which means inflation and basically a collapse of the dollar. So they're trying to protect this and keep the system going so they can get this war started, so all eyes are off the central bankers. Now, Russia is out there. They're meeting with Syria. They're trying to negotiate peace with the opposition and with the Syrian government. And again, this is something the United States government central bankers don't want, the Arab nations don't want, Israel doesn't want, UK, and all the other private Western central bank countries. They do not want peace in this area, because we know this from the Geneva II talks, when we had Syrian President Assad and the Syrian opposition forces, the Free Syrian Army, which is backed by the United States. They had the Geneva II talks. The only thing on the agenda was Assad to step down. So they're really not looking for peace. Their goal has always been the same, and that is for Assad to be removed from power. Now, Moscow is out there, and they're saying, listen, we will negotiate peace between the U.S. and Syria. If Syria asks, we will get involved and try to broker a deal, just like Putin did during September of 2013, when that false flag chemical weapons attack thing occurred. Putin stepped in and brokered a peace deal. But again, we can see we're back exactly where we were, and the United States government central bankers, they do not want peace. Right now, Secretary of State John Kerry told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that any congressional authorization of military force against the Islamic State militants should not prohibit the use of ground troops or limit the battles in Iraq and Syria. Kerry said that President Obama has been crystal clear about his preference to rely on local forces to defeat the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, but Kerry told the Senate committee that any measure authorizing the use of military force should not ban the use of American ground forces or place geographical limitation on the effort. We certainly believe this is the soundest policy, and while the president has been clear, he's open to clarifications on the use of U.S. combat troops to be outlined in an AUMF. That does not mean we should preemptively bind the hands of the commander-in-chief or our commanders in the field in responding to scenarios and contingencies that are impossible to foresee, Kerry said. Kerry said the administration does not anticipate taking operations beyond Iraq or Syria, but if Islamic State poses a threat to American interest or personnel in other countries, it wouldn't want any constraints to set up these forces and bring ground troops in. And we can see they're laying the groundwork for this. They understand they're going to bring in ground troops. This is why they commandeered an air base in Iraq. This is why they're setting up division headquarters. This is why they leaked the CIA torture report at this specific moment. This is why the Islamic State has a radioactive bomb in Europe. They're trying to make the case of why we need boots on the ground. And we can see Kerry is calling for Congress to send ground troops to fight in Iraq. That's basically what he's saying. He's saying we're going to need them eventually, and they're getting prepared to do this. Now, it turns out the U.S. is going to be training the Syrian opposition forces in March of 2015. They will be ready to fight during this period, and they're going to train 5,000 soldiers per year. So they're expecting this thing to go on for a very long time. And as we know, once the U.S. gets into this area with troops, U.S. troops, we have Russia and China waiting on the other side, and this is going to turn into World War III. And they understand this, and they understand this is going to be a long drawn-out war. It might even go nuclear once things really start to heat up. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.